Hey guys, it's September the 29th, 2025, and I hope everybody's been having a wonderful day so far today. It's a rainy day here in South Carolina, but no tropical storm or hurricanes as of yet, and it looks like it's most likely going to get pulled out into the Atlantic Ocean. I was watching something earlier today, and they were basically saying that that big hurricane that's out there, it's going to actually just pull that tropical storm away from us. So fingers are still crossed. Hopefully it doesn't hit us and everything will be a-okay. But I've been thinking today. I know yesterday I was talking about that I was going to do a video on alcohol and violence, and I've still got all those notes. I'm going to do that at some point, maybe tomorrow, some point this week. I don't know. I didn't do all those notes for no reason, but what I wanted to talk about today is just something that's been on my mind all day today because, you know, those thoughts of drinking have really been coming up today. I've thought about drinking quite a good bit. You know, basically ever since I woke up this morning, those thoughts have just been hanging out in my mind. And what I was thinking about, what I wanted to talk about today is something that was on my mind earlier today. And I'm sure there's going to be other people out there who are going to be able to relate to what I'm talking about. And I'm going to go ahead and get into it. And what I want to talk about today, I think there's going to be a lot of people out there who are going to be able to relate to this. This is one of those things I've never really discussed on the channel ever. Why? I don't know. You know, on days like this when I'm struggling, you know, it's hard to come on here and talk about this, but I still do it. And you know, on days like today when, you know, it's been on my mind a lot, I will come on here and talk about the feelings that I'm having. And just like, you know, like I said, I'm going to discuss that today. And what that is sometimes on days like today when I'm really thinking about drinking, I can get angry at myself, and I'll start, you know, just looking back at how, you know, how I abused alcohol and how I'll never be able to get the opportunity again to ever have another drink. And that's what I'll get mad at myself about. You know, I'll start to beat myself up, and, you know, and like I was talking about in yesterday's video, you know, that inner dialogue and talking to myself, you know, when I get those thoughts and I'm thinking about it, just like today, I was thinking about drinking earlier today, and, you know, my mind automatically kicked in. You know, I was having that conversation with my inner dialogue, and, you know, my mind was basically telling myself that, you know, you did this to yourself. You drank so much that you'll never be able to go back and have another drink again. And I know that. I know that I'll never be able to have another drink. I just can't. And, you know, like on a day like today, when it's been on my mind all day long, I keep thinking about how nice it would be to have a drink. You know, because I think at the end of the day, all I want to do is I just want to feel that euphoria. I just want all my problems to melt away. You know, I've just got some stuff going on, and it's been bothering me. You know, and when I'm going through stuff, you know, that's one of the first things my mind resorts to is, you know, thinking about drinking. And it's hard, you know, I talk about this all the time, but sometimes these emotions and these feelings are really hard to work your way through, especially if you've used alcohol or substance for years and years and years as ways to deal with those emotions. And I still struggle. You know, I've been sober for 3.5 years now, and I'm still struggling handling my emotions. And there's certain emotions that I have, you know, harder times dealing with than others, and one of them is anger. I've spoken about this many times on here, but, you know, anger is one of those emotions that every time it happens, I start thinking about drinking for some reason. Why? I don't know. I guess because I just feel like I could go get a 6-pack of beer or a pint of alcohol or whatever and, you know, drink it, and I would forget about everything. And is that necessarily true? Not necessarily, because I was just talking about this in a video the other day, that sometimes when I would get upset about something, or I was having a really bad day, and then I decided to drink in order to, you know, wash my problems away, sometimes I would start going really negative. You know, I start going down this really dark path, and it was so hard to pull myself out of it. And most of the time I couldn't. I would just be really upset, depressed, just in this really dark place, and I would drink until I passed out. And then when I woke up later on, my mind was so focused on the fact that I felt so bad and I was so hungover, and the fact that I was throwing up and had diarrhea and all these things. I wasn't focusing on what was going on, what was upsetting me anymore, because like I said, I was so focused on the fact that I felt so bad. So I could really forget about my problems for about a 24-hour span until I decided to drink again. And I don't have that anymore. I can't go and drink a beer or two or six, to let my problems all wash away. I just can't do that anymore. I know exactly what would happen if I was to go back and have that one drink. I know. My whole entire life would fall apart if that happened. I would disappear. I've spoken about this, but I know myself. I would disappear. If I was to go have one beer, just one, that would set off a chain reaction of so many negative, bad things in my life. And before you know it, the guilt and the shame would set in so strong. I wouldn't be able to look my wife or my kids in the face. I wouldn't be able to look my mom and dad in the face. I wouldn't be able to look my brother in the face. I wouldn't be able to look you guys. I wouldn't be able to look in the camera and talk with y'all. Because I would feel so guilty and so shameful. I mean, the shame would be unbearable. I know it would be. And like I said, and that's why I know that I cannot go back and have a drink. No matter how bad my day is, no matter how bad of a time that I'm having, no matter how depressed that I get or sad that I become or angry that I get, no matter what emotion that I'm dealing with, alcohol is not the answer for me, and it's not the answer for you either. And I really didn't want to go into all that kind of stuff today. Like I said, I really wanted to talk about the fact of, I'm really curious how many other people out there, get upset with yourself for doing this. Like what I'm talking about. The fact that my inner self gets upset with me because I abused alcohol the way that I did, and I ruined my possibility of ever having another drink ever again. And I know that, like I said, I know that for a fact. I will never be able to have another drink again. Will I ever drink again? I can't say that 100% for sure. I hope I don't ever drink again. I'm going to try my best to never drink again, but I can't sit here and say that it'll never, ever happen again. I don't know. I don't know what the future is going to bring. Like I said, I don't plan on it. I don't want to, but one day might it happen. I don't know. I don't know what life's going to bring me. I don't know what circumstances I'm going to be in. I just don't know. But like I said, I'm going to try my very best to never go back. I don't want to go back to that life. I don't want to go back to that life of hell, because it's just absolutely horrible. I mean, just the way that you feel every single day, the depression that comes along with it, you're just depressed for days on end, and, you think alcohol is going to be the answer and it's going to pull you back out of it, and it never does. Like I said, I just went through these very long periods of darkness. And then eventually I would pull myself back out, and it usually happened whenever I would try to get sober again. I'd quit drinking for a week, things would start to improve, relationship with my wife and my kids would start to improve, my health would start to feel better, I just felt better. And then before you know it, I got that wild idea that I can have a 6-pack of beer, and then everything fell apart all over again. Before you know it, I was right back at the liquor store getting a half-gallon of vodka. And that's another reason why I know that I can never go back, because I would not stop at beer. It just doesn't work that way. I would go get beer. Maybe I would drink beer for 2 weeks or something, who knows. But at some point down the road, I would end up at the liquor store, and I would have a bottle of vodka in my hand. And like I said, everything would just fall apart if I was to do so. But I'm really curious and I'm just wondering, how many of you out there, have had those thoughts before? Like, you've been angry at yourself because you ruined your possibility of ever being able to have a drink ever again. We're never going to be able to have that beer at dinner on a Friday night when we go out to eat, or we're never going to be able to have that glass of wine when we go out with our spouse for dinner. We're not going to be able to have that glass of champagne at some wedding, or whatever it is. You're not going to be able to toast at your kid's wedding. There's these moments in our life where we do think about these types of things. I know I've thought about them for myself. But I've made it through each and every single one of these occasions where I thought that, that it'd be really hard for me not to drink. Either I didn't go to it or I went and I was fine. But once again, just today I've just been thinking to myself, that, why did I do that? Why did I have to drink the way that I did and ruin my possibility of ever being able to have a drink ever again? Because if I hadn't have taken it as far as I did, I'd be able to have a couple of beers on the weekend or something, but I just can't. And I'm sure there's many of you watching right now who are in the same exact boat that I'm in, that we can never have another drink ever again. And if we do, it's going to be a huge mess. And I know for myself, and I'm pretty sure that for each and every single one of you watching this that is thinking the same thing, that you don't want to go back to that life again, waking up every single morning feeling sick and barely being able to get up to get to work and dragging yourself out of bed. And then, you get to work and then you're in the bathroom, 20 times that day. And, you're tired of making up the excuses to your coworkers and your boss. Today it's this and tomorrow it's that. And the next day you got a cold and the next day it's this. And everybody knows that you're hungover because you got so drunk the night before. You come to work, everybody can smell the booze on your breath. I mean, that was me every single day. And then on top of it, I'd walk around bragging about the fact that I was about to get off work, and in about an hour, I'm going to be drinking a drink, and I would say these types of things every single day. Everybody knew how much I drank. I constantly talked about it. That's all I ever talked about. It's all I ever thought about, anything. And I'm glad now, I still think about alcohol. I still think about drinking, but nowhere near the amount that I was before when I was in active addiction, and nowhere near, where I was last year. Every year it gets less and less and less, but, still, I still think about drinking. I still think about drinking all the time. I've thought about drinking all day today. All day. Since the moment I woke up this morning, I was sitting there drinking my coffee, and that thought popped in my head. And that's the first thing that I thought about is, why did you have to ruin it for yourself? You could have a beer today, but now you can't because you drank the way that you did back in the day. And I did. I drank enough for 10 people's lifetimes. I truly did. And I'll never be able to go back to having a drink ever again. I just cannot do it, because if I do, it's just up in smoke. Everything will just dissipate. It'll disappear. My whole entire life will fall apart within a very short period of time. And I do not want to go back to that life again. I do not want to go back to that life of waking up in the morning after blacking out, not remembering what I did. My wife's upset with me, and I've got to figure out why she's upset and what I did the night before. And then I'm trying to scrounge up the change to buy another bottle of liquor the next day, and just the whole thing. I don't have to worry about any of that anymore. The only thing I have to do is fight these urges that I have every once in a while. And like I said, they're few far in between. They're not anywhere near the way they used to be. And, I'm very grateful that I don't think about it as much as I used to. But like I said, today's been one of those days. It's just been on my mind. I've thought about drinking quite a lot here recently. And I know what it is. It's all stress related. And, anytime that I get stressed out, that's the first thing that I think about is my alcohol. It was my best friend for so long. It was my confidant for so long. Anytime that I had any kind of a stressful or, situation that was bothering me, I would just drink. And I didn't have to face it. But now I do. And, I still struggle with facing my challenges in life without my alcohol. There's still times when I hesitate because I'm still getting used to being comfortable, being sober. And you would think that after 3.5 years that I would have this all licked and everything be solid and I wouldn't think about drinking at all, but I still do. And today's been one of those days. I've struggled all day today. But the thing is that I haven't acted on those thoughts. I've remained sober. And I'm going to continue to remain sober the rest of the day today. What tomorrow brings, I don't know. But I know that for a fact that today that I will not drink. And I hope that whoever you are watching right now, that you decide to make the same decision today and decide to stay sober for the rest of the day as well. We'll face tomorrow when it gets here. who knows what tomorrow's going to bring. All we know is we are alive right now in this moment, and we have the decision to make, drink or not. And I decide not to, and I hope you do as well today. I just wanted to come on here and talk about the fact that I've struggled today, and just let other people know you. If you're having those thoughts, if you've struggled here recently, we all struggle. You know, there's some people out there that don't struggle at all. They quit drinking, they don't think about it anymore, and that's awesome. But that's not me, and that's not my life. And for any of you out there watching this right now that still think about drinking after, you know, X amount of sobriety, I'm right here with you. And like I said, let's stay sober one more day. Thank you so much for watching today, guys. I really do appreciate it. And until tomorrow, I will see you guys then. Hopefully, by the time I get tomorrow's video posted up, all this mess will be out in the Atlantic Ocean, far away from us, and I can take a big sigh of relief and go on about my week. So anyway, once again, thank you so much for watching, guys. I really do appreciate it. And until tomorrow, I will see you all then. I love you guys so much. Bye-bye.